Tonight we're journeying back to Chang'an, the capital of the Tang Dynasty, the city of poets, princes, and perfume sellers. The city where silk rustled like leaves in moonlight, and the markets never truly slept. At a time when most of the world went dark after sunset, one place stayed lit with lanterns, laughter, and the hush of silver coins. Why? What kept merchants awake? Let's walk together, past the outer gates, through streets scented with roasted sesame, to a market where fire dancers twirl beside Persian rug traders, and monks sip tea beside musicians from Samarkand. This is not a dream, this is Chang'an, and the night has just begun. The year is somewhere between 740 and 750 CE, the high point of the Tang Dynasty. Chang'an is the beating heart of China, the final jewel of the Silk Road, and one of the largest cities on earth. At its height, Chang'an held nearly 1 million people, a sprawling grid of wide avenues and walled wards, temples and palaces, gardens and tea houses. The city is shaped like a chessboard, divided into rectangles. Each rectangle is a ward, and each ward is like its own miniature city, some filled with wealthy families, others with craftsmen, musicians, servants, or foreign traders. As the sun sinks behind the western gates, the streets of Chang'an begin to shift. The government offices close, the noble carriages vanish, and the city's second life begins. At the edge of the Yongning ward, a young merchant lingers by the entrance gate. He's 22, he sells spiced plums and candied ginger in the night market. His cart is polished, his clothes are simple but clean, and he carries two things more valuable than coin: a permit to trade after dark, and a secret recipe for pickled lotus root, passed down by his grandmother. The Tang Dynasty government officially shut down the city gates at dusk. The night was meant to be for rest, quiet, and order, but the guards were tired, and the merchants were clever. A small bribe, a familiar smile, a nod, and the gates were left ajar. The night market was technically illegal, but everyone visited it. You enter along a wide avenue lined with red banners and low clay lamps. The lanterns hang from curved wooden beams, their soft yellow glow dancing against worn walls and fabric stalls. The air is thick with 5 competing scents: grilled scallion pancakes, spiced lamb skewers, honeyed chestnuts, jasmine tea, and slow-cooked pork belly. Everything smells rich, warm and comforting, like a festival and a kitchen had fallen in love. To your right, a woman with silver hair sells ribbons dyed with crushed hibiscus. To your left, a man with soot on his sleeves juggles 3 flaming torches while reciting a poem in a deep northern accent. In front of you, children point at shadow puppets behind silk screens. The figures dance across paper in dramatic battles, part lion, part dragon, all magic. No one is in a hurry, no one is loud. The city exhales. You might expect the market to be noisy, but it isn't. The voices are low, the laughter is soft. The background music floats from a guzheng being played beneath a silk canopy. The instrument has 13 strings, plucked gently, each note carrying just far enough to be heard without disrupting the hum of trade. You hear, as a scribe writes names in calligraphy for a couple holding hands, the clink of ceramic cups at a street tea house, the flutter of a silk robe as a dancer spins beside an incense vendor, the occasional cough from an old man boiling sweet taro broth. There are no bells, no shout, just the rhythm of life slowed by moonlight, wrapped in cloth, and scented with ginger. One of the most magical things about the night markets of Chang'an is how global they were. At a time when most European cities were quiet and self-contained, Chang'an welcomed travelers from Persia, India, Korea, Central Asia, and beyond. Tonight, you pass a Sogdian merchant selling cobalt blue glass beads. His beard is braided, his clothes richly embroidered. He speaks just enough Chinese to bargain, and just enough charm to overcharge. Next to him, a woman from the kingdom of Khotan, near modern-day Xinjiang, sells wool dyed with saffron and pomegranate. She smiles shyly at every passerby. Her scarf is printed with geometric stars. You overhear 3 languages in a single minute: Mandarin, Turkic, Sanskrit. At the far corner of the market, a small puppet theatre performs a play based on an Indian epic, retold with Chinese flair. and next to a storyteller from the western mountains, seated cross-legged on a mat, telling a tale about a woman who dreamed of a snow leopard. The listeners are silent. Even the wind holds its breath. Let's return to the young plum merchant from earlier. His name is Wei Tao. His father was a salt trader. His mother once embroidered scroll cases for the mayor's wife. Wei Tao has lived in Chang'an all his life, but he only found freedom after dark. He opens his cart right before sunset. First he wipes down the brass handle, then he arranges the plums, some coated in sugar, some soaked in rice wine, others pressed into chewy discs wrapped in lotus leaves. He lights 2 small oil lamps on each side of the cart. He checks the coals in the brazier beneath the honey pot. He folds a square of linen into a perfect triangle in case someone cries. His spot is good, between the fire juggler and the man with tiny clay oxen that bounce on thin reeds. He has regulars, a poet who always buys 2 candied plums, but never eats them. A guard who claims he only stops by for his daughter. A widow who pays in coins from a forgotten era, and tells long stories while the steam rises between them. Wei Tao doesn't make a fortune, but he does make people smile, and some nights, that's enough. As we move deeper into the night, we meet more of the people who gave the Chang'an night market its quiet rhythm, not the loud vendors or loud buyers, but those who filled the spaces in between. Now imagine, just beyond a small archway carved with dragon scales and cloud motifs, there's a tea stall. It's nothing fancy, 4 wooden benches, a table that leans slightly left, and a canopy of woven reeds that creaks in the wind. But people wait in line for it. The woman behind the table is in her early 60s. She doesn't talk much. Her sleeves are rolled past her elbows, and her tea always tastes like it remembers something old. She pours from 2 kettles, 1 silver, 1 clay, 1 for jasmine, 1 for roasted barley. She never mixes the 2. Not because it's forbidden, just because it isn't done. She knows all her customers. She doesn't ask what kind of tea they want. She pours what they need. A tired student gets warm barley with a pinch of ginseng. An anxious bride-to-be gets jasmine with a drop of plum wine. A merchant counting coins too fast gets nothing, just a look and a moment of silence. And when she finishes, she turns the cup once clockwise, once counterclockwise, and sets it down. No words, just tea. On a raised wooden platform, behind a screen of thin white silk, shadows begin to dance. The puppeteer is small and quiet, perhaps 12 years old, barefoot, with an ink-stained thumb. He holds 2 thin sticks in each hand, and the figures, a dragon, a monkey, a clever fox, move like wind through rice. The screen lights from behind with a bowl of glowing coal. The colors yellow, orange, and deep red are painted onto parchment. When he moves the puppet's jaw, the audience leans in. Behind him, an older man chants the story. It's about a farmer who wished for wealth and got a lesson instead. No one moves. Even the insects seem to pause. When the play ends, the puppeteer bows. No applause. Just a few quiet coins in a box made from scrap wood. He sits back down, ties his sandals, and drinks from a chipped clay bowl. One show ends, another begins. As we walk through the market, just before the southern market path curves toward the temple walls, there's a small stall with no sign, but you know it's the spice seller before you even reach it. You smell it: sandalwood, cardamom, dried orange peel, star anise, salted chili, osmanthus, crushed lotus, and cinnamon so fresh it makes your teeth buzz. The merchant behind the table is always laughing, not loudly, just under his breath, as if the spices are telling him jokes no one else understands. He doesn't push sales. He lets the air do the talking. One merchant buys dried tamarind for stews. Another buys whole cloves to press into silk sachets. A cook from the city kitchens buys nothing but inhales 3 times and thanks him anyway. For a few coins you can take home a packet wrapped in linen. It's called sleeping dust, a blend of crushed rose, lavender and fennel. Not magical, not rare, but when you open it beside your mat, the scent carries the night back to you, even when morning comes. He's in his 40s, dressed in layered robes the color of dust and sunrise. His boots are worn, his hat is bent. He carries no stall, no goods, only a scroll pouch tucked beneath his sash and a curved knife tied loosely to his belt. He's been on the road for 5 weeks, from the Gansu corridor, through Dunhuang past the desert and the mountains, through narrow towns and camel paths, all the way here, to Chang'an. He's heard of this market, everyone on the road has, so tonight, he doesn't buy anything. He just watches the silk seller re-roll his bolts for the third time. He watches the tea mistress pour without looking. He watches the puppet boy yawn between scenes. And as he walks he listens for the voice of the city. Not the voices of the people, but the city itself. The way the doors creak, the way the dust settles, the way the wind carries fried dough and poetry in the same breath. Before dawn, he'll sleep at a traveler's inn near the north wall, but for now, he just drifts. Another story passing through story. Just before the market ends, there's a small alcove near the edge of the Great Goose Pagoda, one of the tallest structures in the city. Its silhouette cuts the night like a poem. 7 levels, straight lines, quiet power. At its base there's no fanfare, just a scribe seated on a bench. He carries no books, just a brush, a small dish of ink, and a short stack of bamboo slips. People approach him slowly, not to buy but to speak. He listens, then he writes. Not full scrolls, just fragments, lines from dreams, snippets of overheard conversations, wishes, prayers, apologies. One woman says, "He never said goodbye." The scribe nods, writes something down, and burns it in a small bowl. The ash lifts and disappears. No one knows what he writes, but the city seems lighter when he does. And then it happens. It starts as a cool breeze down the northern lane. Then a few lights flicker. One stall closes early. A pot of soup is covered. A dancer picks up her coin bowl and bows. It's not sudden. It's not loud. But everyone feels it. The night is ending. Lanterns burn lower. Steam from clay pots grows thinner. The puppet screen is folded and tied. The tea stall is wiped down, once with water, once with oil. Even the fire juggler wraps his torches in cloth and bows to the empty square. And yet, some merchants linger. Wei Tao, the plum seller, still leans on his cart. The poet with the plums still hasn't eaten them. The breeze carries the smell of roasted chestnuts into the temple shadows. The sky hasn't yet begun to lighten, but the stars are starting to fade, not because the sun is rising, but because the lanterns are going out. One by one the stalls close, some neatly, some without ceremony. The merchant who sells carved sandalwood birds wraps each one in rice paper and ties the bundle with black string. The woman who offered hairpins from the southern provinces counts her coins, sighs, and tucks a silver flower into her braid. A boy who's been watching the puppet shows all night finally curls up beneath his mother's shawl. Her stall is empty, but her hands are still warm from pouring ginger broth. This part of the night feels different. There's no music, no fire tricks, just the soft rhythm of packing, folding, sweeping, and then, a hush. Even the wind seems to still. By the time the city's eastern gate begins to glow with the faintest blue light, the market is empty, but it doesn't feel abandoned. The clay pots are still warm, the smell of sesame oil still lingers in the stones. A single lantern still swings gently beside a silk banner that reads, "Harmony is found in stillness," and the streets hold memory, not just the memory of voices or steps, but something deep. The memory of a man who waited too long to say what he felt. The memory of a girl who laughed with her brother before he left for the mountains. The memory of a story told in the wrong language, and still understood. Markets hold more than trade, they hold time. And when the stalls vanish, the square becomes a mirror. You see yourself in it, or maybe, who you might have been, if you had lived in that time. Not a hero, not a legend, just someone selling plums, or pouring tea, or walking under a lantern-lit sky. At the first low clang of the morning bell, the city gates shift, guards yawn, roosters call from behind walled courtyards. A cart carrying watermelons bumps across a cobbled lane, and the air changes, just slightly. The night market is gone, but it hasn't disappeared. The stalls are hidden behind doors, the merchants are resting in narrow backrooms, the paper puppets are drying on bamboo frames, the tea mistress is asleep beside her fire pit. They'll be back, not tonight, maybe not for a few nights, but they always return. Because people need places like this, not just for buying or selling, but for remembering, and for feeling something familiar when the rest of the world is asleep. So, what kept merchants awake in Chang'an? Not greed, not obligation, not rules or rebellion. What kept them awake was connection. Connection to each other,
to travelers and friends, to stories and spices, to their city, and its quiet promise that night held its own kind of meaning. While the government urged rest, while the temples called for stillness, the markets moved softly, not to oppose order, but to remind it that people aren't only made of duty, they're also made of longing, laughter, and the rustle of silk under moonlight. What kept merchants awake was life. My dear friend, thank you for walking with us through the lantern-lit streets of Chang'an. If this quiet journey brought you comfort, feel free to subscribe, leave a like or comment below. What kind of market would you build if you could light one after dark? Just a reminder that here, we explore history's gentler spaces, not battles or empires, but the people behind the stalls, the ones who dreamed, created, and whispered between the pages of time. Next time, we'll travel to another quiet corner of the world, where stories rise with the steam of morning tea, or settle into stone just before sleep. Until then, rest well, and may your nights always carry a little warmth from a lantern long extinguished. Good night.